Welcome back to the Tweet Show podcast. As always, I'm your host, Chanler. And on today's episode, we're going to try and break down the NCAA tournament. We're going to go round by round, game by game, talk about every game, talk about each team, who I have coming out on top of 68 teams. Well, actually, we're down to 66 teams because we just had our first playing games today as of this recording. Howard is officially in the field, and Texas is officially in the field. We'll talk about some of those games here in a little bit. But, we're going to talk about all the games. We're going to talk about all these teams. And then if you're watching on YouTube, you can see I have a little notebook here that has all the notes that I need about each team, at least most of the teams. I wrote down some other notes on a little document thing because I got tired of writing because I did a lot of writing. There's probably at least like 15-page worth of teams on here, maybe even 20, honestly. Yeah, I would say about 15 to 20 pages of teams with like random stats and random facts or something like to that effect. But not every team's going to get certain teams are going to get more times, and the other teams are like the 15s and 16s aren't going to get as much breakdown because they're unlikely to beat a 2 or a 1. At least this year, I don't think any 1 or 2 is going down in the first round. But that's just my opinion, and I'm sure if that happens, I will clip all the negative things I ever said about those teams, and I will be like, hand up, I was wrong. I made a fool of myself. But we'll get started here on this late edition recording, I should say, of the Tweet Show podcast. So we'll get. Alrighty, all right, we're going to start here in the East region, kind of go from top left all the way down to the bottom left and go to the top right and all the way to the bottom right, go round by round, game by game, and all that other stuff. So, obviously, the first game, we got Duke versus Sienna. At least I feel like I'm pronouncing the name right. Duke is 32-2 overall, the number 1 seed overall in the tournament. Arguably, probably the best team in the country. But you also can make an argument for also Arizona, Duke, and I think those are your top 3 choices. You can say that they've been the best 3 teams in all of college basketball so far. Assuming they win this game, they get the winner of Ohio State TCU there. And let's see, anything else noteworthy right now? I have like random ass notes like here, basically saying like noteworthy injuries if you're gonna have Duke go far, and as you should, because Duke has been very good this year. You gotta know that their starting center is going to be it sounds like he's probably not going to play, but let me double check because when I wrote that note, it was like on Sunday. But let me check here. Duke's injury report. What do we got on some news? Let's see if I can find the latest one here. Well, let's go with this one from Action Network. I don't think Caleb Foster, who's their starting point guard, is going to come back anytime soon, even though there's always people talking like, if they make it to this certain point, like the Final Four, Elite Eight, he could come back, but who knows at this point. But their starting center, because I'm not even going to try and pronounce his last name. His first name's like Patrick something. I don't want to birch the guy's name or mispronounce it. Okay, let's see. Starting center is dealt with a foot. Also dealing with a foot. I did not realize it was a foot. Like you said, he's giving him all the news on about a return, at least the first round or second round of the big dance. So he could either come back in the first game or the second game. I would most likely see him coming back for that second game because I don't think they're going to need him because, let's be honest, Duke's going to win that first game against them. I don't think you'd have any worries or sweats you could have to worry about with him. But so, yeah. On the other hand, Caleb Foster is probably not going to be back for a while. We're just going to advance Duke on to there. But some other noteworthy stuff here because I wrote down some other stuff. They're in their quad 1 games. They're 17-2. Their 2 losses being to Texas Tech and UNC, and they're 6-0 against quad 2 games. And I think this is qualified as like a quad 3 or 4. I would assume this would be a 4 or maybe even 3. Honestly, I don't even know. I'm going to say it's a 3. And they're also undefeated because their only 2 losses are against quad 1 games, so they don't have a bad loss on their resume. And I wrote down a bunch of their Ken Pom stats here. They're like 4th in offensive efficiency, and they're 2nd in offensive or defensive efficiency. And let's see, what did I have further? I guess like adjusted efficiency margin is plus 38.90. I guess I don't know what that means. I mean, I was looking at the website of the Ken Pom. I feel like I keep saying his name wrong. I don't know why. But anyways, I was trying to look at the stats and trying to read him. Like, what exactly does that mean? And I feel like I kind of get it, but I don't necessarily get it all that much. But anyways, so yeah, I mean, I'm going to have Duke going on and beating them. And I'm sure we'll keep talking about Duke once we come back to them playing whoever I pick in the Ohio State and TCU game. All right, this one's gonna be interesting because nines have recently. Let me see if I can find the stat again about 9 versus 8 here. What's the record? Let's see. Okay, okay, so let's see. 9 holds a slim edge to the 8 seeds. That's their 83 and 77. Because it's basically just a coin flip. Every 8-9 is just a coin flip. And I guess we can talk about Sienna just a little bit. Just like random facts here. I wrote down. I don't want to get too ahead here because I did have some interesting, at least semi-decent facts about Sienna. Okay, they're located outside of Albany, which is like a little, I guess, is like a suburb, or I guess they call it like a colony, I guess, in New York, but it's called it's in Londonville, somewhere in New York, and it's in Hamilton, it's in Albany County. Their head coach is Gary Manak, I believe. He played at Syracuse from 02 to 06. He won a national championship there. His number is retired, and their best player is Gavin Doughty, averaging at about 17 points and about, what did I write down? Never mind. It's his last game. Oh, he's also a sophomore too. And his last game he just played, he averaged about 16 points and 6 rebounds and all that. They were 0-1 in quad 1 games. The one game they played against Indiana was an 81-60. They didn't play a quad 2 game. Quad 3s, they're 2-6. Quad 4s, they're 21-4. It's got to mean something. Their nickname is the Saints. Their mascot is Bernie's the Saint Arnett. They're kind of their rankings here. It's not very good. Offensive ratings about 200. The defensive ratings about 175. Tempo is very slow. They're a very slow team. They're going to try and control the tempo, and I don't think that's going to be the case because Duke's probably going to want to go slightly fast, and I don't think Duke's going to be able to, or Sienna's going to be able to control the pace, but that's why you play the games. But I'm going to take Duke to crush them. So, all right, as we move on to the 8-9 game, like I was sort of saying, that 9 holds a slight edge to the 8 seeds as it's 83-77. So basically, like I was saying earlier, it's a coin flip game in these first round games since 1985 when the tournament expanded to 64 teams. So let's see here. As my notes here, I have Ohio State's the 8 seed. They're 21-12. Bruce Fortin's their best player. He's really good. He can get buckets. Ken Pom, ratings they're 17th in offense. They're 54th in defensive rating. They're also another kind of a slow team. They kind of control the pace. Their their rating on Ken Pom was plus 22.24. Again, I don't know what that means. Kind of just wrote it down. Thought it was important for, I guess, any nerd person out there that wants to know that. Their net rating, I had it, but I can't find it now. I guess maybe I didn't write it. Anyways, they're quad 1 games. They're 4-11. A couple of their big wins, I would say, are Wisconsin, Iowa, and Purdue. The one loss in quad 2s, which I don't even think this game should be considered a quad 2, is they lost to Pittsburgh earlier in the season, and then some notable losses as well. They lost to Illinois, UNC, Nebraska, Michigan, Wisconsin, Virginia. So those are some those notable losses in the quad ones. The betting line, let me check the betting line here to see what the active line is right now for that for the game for Ohio State TCU here. Let's see, I have Ohio State's favored by 2.5, which I had run down, but obviously just wanted to double check to make sure there was not any line movement. As a team, they average about 80 points. They allow about 70 to 72 points. They're not necessarily great. They're not necessarily a great rebounding team, for sure. They're ranked about 358th. I don't know. I guess I don't know how many teams there are anymore. There's a lot, but I feel like that's really low on the rankings if you're trying to get rebounds. But they're top 20 in free throws, so you got to make your free throws, so that's good. So if it's a close game, you're going to probably expect Ohio State most times or not to make their free throws. Obviously, the spread indicates that this could be a close game. So, and then on the TCU side of things, let's see if I did it right down. Here we go, TCU. Okay, so TCU is 22-11 in the Big 12. They were a 9 seed. This team was kind of weird because, like, the first couple, like, I felt like the first month they had a bad loss against New Orleans, who's not even in the tournament, and then they beat Florida. They went toe-to-toe to Michigan in overtime, and then conference play kind of started. They were good to have a good win against Kansas at Kansas, and then they blew that game, and then they were on the bubble. Since then, there was and then in their last 11 games, they have won 9 of their 11 in their last games here. So TCU is kind of a hot team right now in the Big 12. So I wouldn't necessarily want to play them. So like I was sort of saying, their best wins are Florida, Wisconsin. Forget about the Wisconsin game, Iowa State, Texas Tech. Notable wins. And I was also saying they went toe-to-toe in Michigan in overtime. Their quad 2 games, they were 7-2, 3-4. Sorry, excuse me. Notre Dame and New Orleans were sort of and Utah, I guess actually Utah is a quad 2, so I made an arrow. So they're quad 3 to 4s are Notre Dame and New Orleans are part of their quad 3 losses. David Punch is one of their best players. He averages about 14 to 15 points a game, 6 rebounds, and shoots about nearly 50% or above from the field. And then they have Xavier Edmonds, who's also probably their second best player, averages about 12 points, 6 rebounds, and also shoots about darn near 55 or plus from the field as well. They average about 80 points a game. They're top 100. They're ranked 160th in rebounds, and they allow about 72 points a game. So they're pretty similar to Ohio State. And then I guess if I wrote down this fun fact about what is a horned frog. So if anybody was curious, what exactly is a horned frog? Why is TCU the horned frogs? TCU is a horned frogs because the Texas horned lizard is a reptilia. God, I can't speak. It's so late. Okay, is a reptilia. Sometimes I can't even read my own damn handwriting. Blah 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 blah. I'll put it in the video. It's basically sounds like they kind of. Let's see, was established on their football field when the school was naming a yearbook athletic teams in 1897. The creature was known as, I don't know, I'm sure there's somebody in the student body was like, you know what, there's a little lizard right here, we're going to make it our little mascot. So I'm kind of a Big 12 homer a little bit. I'm going to give TCU to win. I do think they are playing some really good basketball. I would lean towards TCU right now. And then the next game, let's see what I got here. All right, so yeah, the next game is St. John's versus Northern Iowa, which is obviously a local team here in Iowa. It's about an hour, 30 minutes away from me. We'll talk about St. John's first, and then we'll talk UNI. St. John's this year is 25-6. They're the Big East champs in regular season and postseason, and they winning their conference championship. This year, St. John's was 5-5 in quad 1 games. Their notable losses were to Bama, ISU, Auburn, Kentucky, and UConn. And then there are 2 notable quad 1 games with both for UConn. They beat UConn twice, both at Madison Square Garden. St. John's kind of started a bit slow, and then they caught on fire because they won 19 of their last 20 games entering the tournament. So that's pretty good. Now, granted, the Big East was kind of down this year. there's not as many. There weren't as many good teams this year as there usually is in the past. It was UConn and St. John's, because St. John's only lost two games in the Big East, I think. Yeah, 2 games in the Big East. Once to UConn, and then they lost to Providence. And their team stats, they average about 81 points, allow about 70 points. They get about 38 rebounds a game. They shoot about 72% from the field. Their best player, Zuby, he was the Big East Player of the Year and also Defensive Player of the Year, averaged about 16, 7, 5, and 2 blocks a game. And they're searching their first Sweet 16 since 1999, which would be huge for St. John's. So, and then as for UNI, the UNI Panthers, no one really expected UNI to be in this position here. I'm not going to lie to you. I didn't think they were going to make the tournament this year. UNI's first tournament appearance since 2016, which some of us remember, the whole half-court shot against Texas, and then the sad part about, or the bad part about that also that year is when they blew a big lead against A&M in the last minute or so. I watched that game, or I watched that little highlight package almost every March. I'm like, how did UNI blow this lead? It's so remarkable to me how they did it. I don't know how they did it. They were just making so many dumb decisions. It was crazy. But anyways, kind of their playing style. They're really good on defense. They're scoring. Number 1 scoring defense in the nation. Sure, you can say, oh, well, Chanler, they're not really necessarily playing any that good, but, which is, could be true. I'm not going to disagree with you on that, but stats don't lie. They're number 1 scoring defense in the country right now. They hold teams under 29% from 3. And they hold teams under roughly about 60 points. So this could be a kind of a slop, because UNI loves to play slow. They're the 3rd slowest team in the country. They're going to try and muck this game up. If they're going to try and pull up an upset, I think they're going to have to really slow this game down and just play in the 6. It's going to be an ugly, ugly game, because the halftime score, I bet you, is going to be St. John's 23, Northern Iowa 16. And then going with 4 minutes left in the game, it's going to be St. John's is going to be only up by 6 points. It's going to be 52, UNI 48, or I guess 46, which would make it yeah. So yeah, either way, it's going to be a 6 to 4 point game with 4 minutes left, because somehow UNI just kept grinding it out. But I think I'm going to lean towards St. John's, because I do think they are the better team, and the spread does kind of reflect that, because the spread right here, and the game's on Friday, by the way. And they are a 10-point favorite, and the over-under is 131.5. But yeah, if I was a St. John's fan, I would be just a little worried, because if UNI makes this a fist fight, just like a good old-fashioned boxing match, or an ugly-ass, a lot of bricks and a lot of misses, then UNI could capitalize and just snatch it from them. So, but like I said, I'm going to go with St. John's. I would take UNI maybe with the points, but I have to do a little bit more research on that end. I wouldn't touch the total here. It's it's really low, and I'm just be I don't want to watch an ugly ass game. But yeah, I'm gonna probably lean towards St. John's here on this end. All right, we're gonna move on here to the Kansas versus Calabasas. We're gonna start with Kansas here. Kansas is the 4th seed in this region. They're 23-10 this year. The betting line is right as of right now. Kansas is a 14.5 point favorite as of right now against California Baptist. Is that how you pronounce it? I don't even know what that. Yeah, Cal Baptist. Okay. Anyways, so Kansas, you got a top 3 pick, and Darren Peterson. It was sort of the most of the talk this year with Darren Peterson was that he doesn't really play any games. He's all about worried about his NBA draft stocks and all that. And then I think eventually he kind of got tired of the narrative, and it was just fine, I'll start playing basketball. If you guys just want me to play basketball, I'll play basketball. But I do think there were some injuries out there that they were trying to protect the kid. And sometimes I just think he could not play at times because there was just cramps. And cramps are just cramps. It happens. But, yeah. Let's see. They got also the try and pronounce this guy's name. Okay. even though I've watched a bunch of Kansas basketball this year. Flory Abedonga, 25, about 25. No, never mind. I misread that. Okay. I was going to say he averages about 25 points. Like, no, he doesn't. Wrong thing. Okay, so yeah, he was the Big 12 defensive player of the year for Kansas this year. They're top 50 in rebounds, and they shoot about 76% from free throws. And you're going to be like, Chan, why do you keep telling us these free throw stats? Because free throws matter. If these games are going to be tied, you got to trust what teams are going to make their free throws, and Kansas shoots about 76% of your free throws. And you got to make your foul shots. Simple stat. You got to make your free throws. Their Ken Pond ratings about 20. They're 21 in the rankings, and they're plus 24.4. And then their offensive ratings 118.3, which is 57th in the country. And then their defensive rating is top 10. They're 10th in the country with a 93.9. And their tempo is about 164, which is kind of in the middle, I would say. Their net ranking is 21. They're 99 in quad 1 games, 71 in quad 2 games. Their notable wins are Tennessee, ISU, BYU, and Arizona, as well as some of their losses are to UNC, Duke, UConn, Arizona, and Houston. This most recent Houston one was at the Big 12 tournament. And then I kind of found this kind of interesting of Kansas. In the last 5 appearances for Kansas last year they lost to Arkansas in the round of 64, and the year prior they lost in the round of 32 to Gonzaga, and the round prior to that they lost in the round of 32 to Arkansas, and then that previous year they won the national championship with against UNC, and the year prior to that they lost in the round of 32 to USC. So I mean, take away the national championship from 2021 and 2022. Kansas hasn't been to the Sweet 16 very often in the past 5-ish years. Not a whole lot of Sweet 16 runs out of Kansas lately. Now, granted, I feel like Kansas necessarily hasn't been the sort of the dominance that they usually are in the past, besides obviously in 2021, 2022, when they obviously won the national championship. But I feel like that they're like last year, I think they were a 7 seed, and which is like usually unheard of from Kansas, being a 7 seed. And obviously they lost in the first round, and they weren't necessarily that good at all last year. I didn't think they were going to make it far. But yeah, I think this year might be a little bit different, but we'll see here. All right, let's talk about Cal Baptist. Okay, this is sort of what I have for them. This is their first ever, they joined so their Cal Baptist is fairly new to the Division I. They joined in 2018. This is their first appearance. They made the other appearances before, but those were Division II. They're a very tall roster. They're very tall, very lengthy, very tall. Their coach is Rick Corey. He's been there since 2013. His record is 275 and 136. Their Ken Pong ratings about 106. They're plus 599. Their offensive ratings ranked 191. They're top 50 in defense. Their tempo is very slow as well. They're a very slow team. Their net ratings are 98. They're 0-1 in quad 1 games. They lost by 31 to BYU. And then there are some other notable losses were to Utah and Colorado, and those were a little bit closer losses. They finished second in the WAC behind Utah Valley. And then there's a guy named Dominique Daniel Jr., who could be a name to watch out for. He averages about 23 points a game, shoots about 40% from the field, and 32% from 3. He's a name to watch out for. Their team-wise, not necessarily a great three-point shooting team. They shoot as a team about 33%. I wrote down that like Jordan Miller and Jaden Jackson, they both shoot about 35% from 3. So not holding a whole lot of faith in the Cal Baptist Lancers here. So I think I'm going to lean towards Kansas beating them. Now, here's a game that I love. I think this is my upset pick here. Doing my research here, I fell in love with South Florida. Let's start with South Florida first, because I fell in love with them. This team is awesome. Okay, first-year head coach with South Florida, because I think the previous head coach unexpectedly passed away because of some illness. So Brian Hudson stepped in. Offensively, they're top 10 nationally. They average about 88 points, nearly 90 points a game. They're an elite offensive rebounding team. They get about 43 boards a game, not offensively, but just total wise. They get a lot of rebounds. They rebound the heck out of the ball. They're top 10 in free throw shooting, and their best player won Player of the Year in the conference, won Defensive Player of the Year in the conference, and won Newcomer of the Year in the conference as well. Won 3 awards in one season. Unreal stuff. And his name is Isaiah Nelson. I believe that's how you pronounce his first name. He's a 6'10 forward, number 35. He averages about 15 points, 10 rebounds, and 4.14 blocks. I mean, kid's unreal. Fell in love with this team. They're 2-3 in quad 1 games. They're 6-2 in quad 2 games. They got this kid named Wes Ensign. He's a really good 3-point shooter. Joseph Penn. He's another good 3-point shooter for the team. The Joseph guy set a record for threes in a season for them. And then they have this other kid named Josh. He's really good. The defense is very well. They get a lot of steals. So I'm thinking I might pick South Florida here as my upset against Louisville. I kind of watched like one highlight of it, and then doing the numbers and doing the research, fell in love with the team because they won the regular season title in the American, and then they won the conference tournament. And I love South Florida. Love them. All right, and let's go back to Louisville here to sort of satisfy the Louisville fans that are like, oh, Chanler, we're not going to lose to South Florida. Don't even bother. No. You guys ain't ready for Isaiah Nelson. This guy is awesome. This team is awesome. I can't wait to watch him on tomorrow, which I guess it is tomorrow, so I can't wait to watch him on Thursday. Cannot wait. All right, but if you're a Louisville fan, you're going to say to yourself, well, Jan, this is year 2 for Pat Kelsey's turnaround. Louisville's done a great job turning around that program after the suckiness that was Louisville. There was nothing good about Louisville for a while after the whole scandal of Rick Pitino and the program not turning around, or the post-absence of Rick Pitino or something like that. So Pat Kelsey's done a great job. Their Ken Pond ratings they're ranked about 19th in the country. Their net ratings about a plus 25-42. Sorry. Their net or the offensive ratings about top 20. They're ranked 19th. And their defensive ratings about a 25. Ranked 25th. And their tempo, it's pretty good. They were pretty up and down team. So there could be a lot of points scored in this game. A lot of points could be scored in this game. Their net ratings about a 17th. They were 8-10 this year in quad 1 games. Notable wins were against Kentucky, Miami, and SMU. And then some notable losses were to Arkansas, Duke, Virginia, and UNC. And then they were undefeated in quad 2 games as well. Like I said, they're a high-tempo team, shoot a lot of threes, score a lot of points, about 85 points a game. They rebound the ball as well, and then they get a lot of assists. Markel Brown, they're highly recruited talent that they got out of high school. They're freshmen. Could be a first-round pick this year. Hasn't played since February 20th. With some type of back injury, could be back for that game. He's a little day-to-day right now. At least that's what I had in my notes. Let's see if we can get an update on Markel Brown Jr. Okay, so let's see. This article was made about 16 hours ago. Let's see. It's safe to say no. Okay, yes. Blah, 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 blah. Missed 12 games. Let's see. After missing last week's ACC tournament, it remains to see he will be available on Thursday afternoon against South Florida. Okay, so he's most likely expected to play against that team. But like I said earlier, I like this team a lot. I like South Florida. I'm going to take the Bulls. And then upset here. All right, we're going to move on here to Michigan State as they are the number 3 seed in the East region. This is Tom Izzo's 31st season as the Michigan State head coach. Their strengths are rebounding, defense, veteran front court, strong guard play. Their weakness is going to be 3-point shooting. Their key players being Jeremy Fears, Conan Carr, elite dunker, very athletic, big time dunker. Jeremy averages about 15 points and 9 assists. They have solid KenPom ratings. They're 24th in offensive rating, and they're about their top 15, ranked 13th in defensive rating as well. They're 10-6 against quad 1 games, and then they're 4-1 in quad 1 games as well. They're top 40 in rebounding. They're top 20 in assists. They're top 50 in free throws. Tom Izzo's record in the tournament is 59-25 with 8 Final Fours, 10 Elite Eights, 15 Sweet 16s, and 1 national championship. And this is his record in the tournament, round by round. In the round of 64, he's 21-5. Round of 32, he's 15-6. Sweet 16, he's 10-5. Elite 8, he's 8-2. Final Fours, he's 2-6. In the national championship game, he's 1-1. 1-1 last one. So I kind of like this Michigan team a lot. I've seen a couple of their games, been watching some of their games. I'm just a little worried if Jeremiah Fear's just going to kick someone in the balls again, or he's going to do some type of weird shenanigan that we're all going to be like, dude, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Stop doing that. He's kind of like this year's Grayson Allen a little bit, just a little bit. I don't think he's necessarily egregious of what Grayson Allen was back when he was at Duke, because I think Grayson Allen at Duke was a fucking menace. No one liked his ass whatsoever. It also didn't help that he was white and also played for Duke, so that didn't help anything with all the shenanigans that he was doing. Okay, so let's move on here to North Dakota State. This is the Summer League champion from the regular season and the tournament champs, North Dakota State, all the way from Fargo, North Dakota. This is David Richmond's 12th season as the head coach. He's been the head coach there since 2014. He was also a former player as well. And then, let's see, he was also the coach of the year this year for them. Demarion Wheeler-Thomas, it's our best player. He averaged about 13 points a game. He was all second team in the league. And then Trayvon Carson, all Summer League first team, I guess. Actually he was probably their best player, but I guess he doesn't really score a lot. But anyways, Noah Furden, who was 6th man of the year, team style. They score about 80 points, very ball movement heavy, multiple shooters, pretty solid on the defensive end. They they only give about 70 points a game. Very aggressive on the perimeter. Their strengths are experienced guards, turnover margins limited, and they're good three-point shooting. Weakness is they're a little undersized. They're not necessarily as big on the inside. And then they didn't play that great of a schedule. They didn't play any quad 1 games. They were 0-1 in quad 2s, and they were in the quad 3 games. They were 5-4. So I think I'm going to lean towards Michigan here. Unfortunately, I'm not going to pick the Bisons here, and also because I have a cousin who went to South Dakota State, and he does not like the Bison because they are rivals, and I will not be picking the Bison out of respect for my cousin who is a Jackrabbit. All right, last 2 games here in the East region, and then we're going to take a break. All right, 7th seed UCLA taking on the UFC Knights out of the Big 12. UCLA. This is they finished 6th in the Big 10. They went 23-11. Their head coach is Nick Cronin. Plays leading scorer Tyler, I forget how you pronounce his last name, is expected to be available for the tournament for that first game. He got injured during the Big 10 tournament, so he is expected to play this game. At least that's what all the reports are. Also, one note, if you're going to pick UCLA, just know that Nick Cronin hates going out to the East Coast, so I think I might this is kind of a lean towards the other team, but I'm going to give you some other stats here. Tyler and Donovan Dent are their 2 best players. Kempong, ratings 27th. They're 22 in offensive rating. They're 53 in defensive rating, and they're a very slow team. Very slow tempo. They're 18th in tempo, so very slow team. Their net rating's about a 30. Their quad 1 games, they're 5-8 this year. Their quad 2 games are 5-3. Offensively, their style is ball movement, half court set, and pick and roll with Dent, with the big guy, with Tyler. Is very reliable, very dependent on pick and rolls, and their weakness is bad 3-point shooting team. Can struggle and transition if the team's kind of going to go up and down a little bit. They can struggle a little bit with that. As for UCF, out of the Big 12, they went 21-11 this year under head coach Johnny Dawkins, who was a former Duke coach, former Dookie. He did a really good job this year after losing a bunch of key players from last year's team. He didn't necessarily make the tournament, but they were key players, and you would like to see to retain some of your good players from last year. But it did a really good job. We're getting a bunch of new guys again under this new regime, or not new regime, but trying to get all these guys to buy in on a new playing with a bunch of new guys. Their key metrics, they score about 80 points. They allow about, they're not necessarily a great defensive team, so they can score. Basically, if they're going to want to win this game, they're going to have to outscore UCLA because they can't really get a whole lot of stops. They're not necessarily a great defensive team. Their offensive rating, I guess I didn't write down where they were offensively. I just wrote down their 115.6, and their defensive rating is 110.9. Not necessarily great defensively, but offensively it's pretty solid. Their strength of schedule this year was top 50. Their strength is firepower and athletic wings. The weakness is defense and inconsistency. It's like one game they look good, and the other game they look bad. Their net rating is 51. They're 5-8 in quad one games. A couple of their good wins are against A&M, Kansas, and Texas Tech. They were 5-3 in quad two games. I should pick UCLA because I do think they are the better team. But Mick Cronin hates going out east. He really does. Because he was saying there was like one press conference. I don't know, because he does a bunch of rants, and he was saying like, "Oh, I hate going out east. I'm gonna have to see you're gonna have to see the Statue of Liberty or some bullshit like that." I should pick UCLA. I'm going to pick UCLA just because I think USC is not going to be able to score enough points. And because I think UCLA is going to be able to control the tempo and they're not going to, UCLA or UCF's going to try and sped up UCLA, but I don't think it's going to be the case. So I'm just going to take the Bruins here. All right. The last game in the East region for the first round, we got UConn versus Furman. UConn finishing second in the Big East. They're a 2 seed. 29-5 this year. Their key players, Alex Kerban and Solo Ball. Those are their two main players, I would say, and obviously Dan Hurley being their head coach. And they are just 2 out of their last 3 years they've won a national championship. Obviously 2 years ago they went back to back. Sorry, the yawning's kind of kicking in here. Yeah, I mean they're sort of their strengths are defense, depth, and efficiency. Their weakness a little bit is they're not super fast. It's not a super fast-paced offense or team. Rely on half-court execution for sure. Yeah. Their goal is to look for a third national championship in 4 years. I think their floor is sort of a Sweet 16, but their ceiling is a national championship because they do have some weird losses. Like they lost to Marquette and Creighton again, like I was saying earlier, but during the St. John's preview that the Big East was down this year. That's only why the Big East only got like 3 teams in this year because the Big East was very down this year. So I'm going to pick UConn to win, but let's talk a little bit about Furman. I think a couple years ago they were kind of the darling for a little bit because they did upset Virginia that 1 year because of the one weird just like one of those plays you go, what is he doing? And then they hit a 3 to take the lead, and everybody remembers the Kevin Harlan call. So I wrote down what exactly their mascot is. By the way, their record was 22-12. Appellant, I believe is how you pronounce it. Appellanton is a holy warrior or a knight. Is typically characterized as a noble champ or righteousness because of combining material for powerless like a fighter with or divine magic or something like that. At least that's what the internet said about what exactly is a Peloton. Their net rating's 186. They only caught one game, which I guess was UNI, and they lost that game. They're 0-2 in quad 2 games to High Point, who's in the tournament this year, and Illinois State and everything else. They're quad 3s and 4s. No one's gonna really care, but they were 5-5 in quad 3s and quad 4s. They were 14-4. Their key players are Alex Wiggins and Cooper Bowser. Another thing about Furman is it is in Greensville, South Carolina. It's a top private liberal arts university. It was named after a Baptist pastor, Richard Furman. It was founded in 1826. So there you go. That's everything you need to know about that school. But I'm picking UConn just because, like I said, I don't think 2 seeds going to get upset by 15 this year. All right, let's take a break here, and then we'll get back to more breakdowns of all the games here in just a moment.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
All right, I'm back from my break of sleeping because obviously when I recorded the East region. That was roughly about midnight, and I was getting pretty tired, so I decided to get some rest and wake up a bit early to record the rest of the podcast here. Okay, so now we're going on down to the South region, which the number 1 overall seed is Florida. Obviously, they're the defending national champions. They're the regular season champs in the SEC. They won the conference tournament this year. That was to Arkansas. Florida's kind of was an interesting team this year because they started 9-5 out to start the year. They're 9-5, had some weird losses. They played the first game against Arizona, and then they played some other really good competition like UConn, Duke. So those aren't necessarily bad losses, but you're thinking this year oh man, is Florida going to be any good this year? Are they the same team as last year? And then after January 3rd, they won 17 in their last 19 games. So they went 17-2 in their last 19 games. So you think, oh man, they're going to be one of the hottest teams in America. Now they were starting to make their threes. The guard play was playing a lot better and all that. Their offense is elite. They're top 15 nationally. They just dominate the boards. They're top 5 in that. And they like to get up and down. They're a little up-tempo. I would say some of their weaknesses are, like I said earlier, about their three-point shooting, but I think that's improving. I would also say, kind of like in the beginning of the year, like I sort of said, that their guard play wasn't necessarily playing their best. Like Xavier Lee, coming from the Ivy Leagues, coming down to the SEC, he's probably having to make some adjustment. I think he's playing a lot bit better now. I think the guard play is playing better. And then if the rest started to get some whistles to go towards their way, they're going to be a little, or against them, I should say. They're going to be in a little foul trouble if the refs decide to call fouls on them. They're going to be a little foul trouble. They're not as deep as they were. But, their net rating's about as a 4. They're 12-5 in quad 1s. They're 6-1 against quad 2s. So I'm going to go ahead and just put Florida as victorious over whoever comes out of Lehigh and Prairie View. My little preview on them, because, they're going to play tonight, so here's some little fun facts about each school. For Lehigh, their alumni are C.J. McCollum and some guy named Martin Barman. Lehigh is located in Pennsylvania. They're 18-16 this year in the Patriot League, and their best player is Narcer Litlock. Averages about 21 points. And then for Prairie View A&M, they're one of the oldest public HBUs in Texas. They're the second oldest public institutions. Megan Thee Stallion attended there for for a year or a semester or something like that before she transferred to Texas Southern. So that's all I had for those schools because they're going to lose to Florida. But again, it depends on who wins tonight between them. All right, we're going to move on to the 8-9 matchup here as Clemson is going to take on Iowa. We're going to start with Clemson here because of the 8th seed. Clemson finished this year 24-10. Their head coach, Browell, 16th season there. Their defense carries them a lot. Very defensive-minded team. The squad is. They're a bit balanced offensively. Very slow tempo for sure. Let me get this right up here. Let me see if I can find it here. Let's see. Here we go. So Iowa's currently a 2.5-point favorite against Clemson right now. The over-under is 128. This is going to be sort of similar to the Northern Iowa and St. John's game. It's going to be a slugfest. This game is going to be gross to watch. It's just going to be in the 50s with 3 minutes ago. The score is 54-50. One of the teams up by 4. It's just going to be a slugfest. It's not going to be great. The key players for Clemson are going to be R.J. Godfrey. Basically, if Clemson's going to lose this game, it's going to be because they fall behind early or poor three-point shooting performance from them. So, like I said, I haven't watched too much of Clemson this year because they're in the ACC, and I feel like the ACC hasn't really gotten my attention to watch a lot of Clemson basketball. But anyways, we're going to move on here to Iowa, and we're going to talk about Iowa here. They're 21-12 this year. They're kind of like a weird team this year. It's Ben Sturtz and everybody else. Because Ben Sturtz kind of has been carrying this team a little bit. It's basically been him, and his teammates sometimes have not been very helpful for him this year. And it relates to some of the losses that they have had this year with Penn State, Maryland. Those are the two bad ones for sure. Even though they only qualify as quad 3 losses, but those were one, you can't lose to Penn State. That's a bad loss. You know, they were literally the worst team in the Big Ten. And then also Maryland was like either second or third in that as well. They had a nice win against, did they lose them? No, they lost to Minnesota. That was a quad 2 loss. And then their quad 3 wins were UCLA, Nebraska, and Ohio State, who all made the tournament this year. So they have 3 solid wins. But I was kind of been a little inconsistent, I feel like. Because, like, their coach kind of said it best, like, where they get up for the big games, but they also kind of play down through their competition, sort of like Penn State and Maryland. Now, granted, those games were on the road, but you can't play down in your competition. You can't lose to Penn State or Maryland. Those are games you should win. And I have no idea who I'm going to pick here because this game is it's literally a coin toss. I would lean now. If I pick Iowa here, I am only picking Iowa because, one, I want them to get their ass kicked by Florida, or I just want them to, like, lose in some heartbreaking fashion. Like, they're up, like, 4 with, like, a minute left, and somehow Clemson steals the game from them or something like that. Like, I don't want Iowa to go very far. I can't decide who I'm going to pick here. I'm going to go with... God, I have no idea here. I'm just going to be a hater and just say Clemson wins out of spite, even though I might change it, but as of right now, I'm going with Clemson. All right, we're moving down here to the 5-12 matchup here. You know, what's the record towards the 5-12 matchups in the tournament? Because I feel like the 5-12 matchups is getting pretty close in record-wise. Let's see. The 5-12 matchups in NCAA tournament history is historically one of the frequent upsets, with the number 12 seeds winning at least one of the first round games in 34 of the last 40 tournaments. There you go. Let's see. So, yeah, Vanderbilt, who is currently let's see what the point spread is here. 11.5-point favorites against McNeese State. Their net rating for Vandy is 13. They were 9-7 this year in quad 1s. They were 7-1 in quad 2s. They were a runner-up in this year's SEC tournament game, losing to Arkansas. Their key players are Tyler Tanner. He averages about 19 points. Duke Miles, he averages about 16. Tyler Nickel is a very good shooter for them. Other strengths is fast tempo. They're a fast tempo team. They force turnovers. The weaknesses are a little bit of the defense or the rebounding, and they're kind of a middle pack defense, not great, but could be good at moments, but and they also could get cold from 3 as well. So as for McNeese State, I would say they're top 100 in offense, but not very good rebounding. So this is going to be a very interesting matchup on who gets a rebound, who's going to out rebound the other team, or who's going to get the boards. Ken Pong has McNeese State as the 68 team in the country. They're plus 12, 48. Their offensive ratings are 91. Their defensive ratings in 49, so this could be, I think McNeese State can stay within the number. Their tempo is very slow because they're a very slow tempo team. They played 2 quad 1 games. They played Santa Clara and Michigan. They both lost those games as well. So I'm going to pick Vanderbilt just because of how well they played in the SEC tournament. But I would say if you're wanting to bet here, I would take McNeese State maybe with the points here. Because I think last year, was it last year? Yeah, last year they beat Clemson in the 12. So do with that as you might. Okay, this is now an interesting game here as we got Nebraska versus Troy. Nebraska was one of the most darling stories in all of college basketball this year. They started out 20-0 under Fred Hoiberg. They had some really good wins in their 20-0 start. They had some wins against Michigan State, Illinois, and one other squad. I can't remember, but they were 20-0, and then their last 12 games they were 6-6. Like they were playing good basketball during that 12-game stretch, but sometimes they weren't necessarily playing their best Nebraska ball as well. Payne Stanford, really good shooter. He's awesome. He's an awesome shooter. Fred's son, Sam Hoiberg, Whistle Hustle. I think he's kind of the glue guy for them. And then Mass is definitely a key player for them as well. And they also have depth. They can go 7 to maybe even 8 deep for Nebraska. They get first turnovers. They are limiting three-point shooting on the defensive side. So if you're Troy, you're not going to be able to get too many up threes because they limited you to that. And they're looking to also get their first program win in the NCAA tournament. Nebraska has never won an NCAA tournament game in their program's history. And granted, Nebraska basketball isn't necessarily known for their basketball. Everybody always thinks about Nebraska as a football school, but now Fred has kind of turned them into a nice, solid basketball program, and maybe even better than what their football program is right now. I think more people should invest in the basketball program than the football program, but that's just me. But yeah, Nebraska is trying to get the first win here, and I am rooting for Nebraska to get their first win. Because obviously being an Iowa State guy, Fred being our former coach, I'm rooting for Fred to get that first win for Nebraska. But also, their storyline here, Roy actually hasn't won a tournament game as well. So one of these schools is going to get the first win here. So it's going to be very interesting. So you're probably asking, Chanler, what's Troy all about? Well, let me tell you. Their net rating's 125th, so not great. But they're 1-0 in quad 1 games. They're 2-1 in quads. They lost in triple overtime to USC. Very compelling. Their key players are Victor Valls. He averages about 15 points a game, and so does Thomas Down. He averages about 15 and 10. They're a very good free throw shooting team as well. Not great 3-point shooting. If they can make a couple, Their Ken Pong, the rating's about 141. Their defense is about 161, and their tempo is very slow as hell. They're a very slow team. It is a lot of slow teams in this tournament, I'm kind of noticing here. But yeah, I mean, mid-offense, not great defense, and slow team, I don't know. If Nebraska can kind of get a lead here, I think Nebraska can get away with it. We get the win here, so I'm going to go ahead and pick Nebraska here. All right, now this game is kind of interesting because we got UNC versus VCU here. And this game will be – so North Carolina will not have Caleb Wilson. If I said Caleb Williams. No Caleb Wilson here. He hurt his hand again during some type of practice before the Duke game, which kind of sucked because I think North Carolina could have been like a team they could have – win on some type of a Sweet 16 or Elite 8 run with Caleb Wilson, but without him, I don't know if they're going to be able to do that. I mean, obviously, this is a tournament, and obviously things can happen, and you never know what could happen in these types of games. But I would lean towards VCU as an upset, but let me sort of give you the reasonings on why you should pick UNC. They're 20 in the net ratings. They were 6-8 in quad 1s. They were 5-0 in quad 2 wins. Their Ken Pong was very, very good. They were 32nd in offensive rating. They were 37th in defense. Their tempo was kind of in the North Carolina usually gets up and down the floor. They're not super fast, but they get in transitions pretty often. So their key players are going to be Seth Tumble. He's going to have to make some shots for them. He's going to be a key player for them during this run here. They got Henry Vass, the big man from Arizona. He averages about 16 and 8. So if I'm a USC fan, I would not be thinking you're going to probably win. But so yeah, they're definitely on upset alert for sure. Because VCU, on the other hand, defense very good. They're the back-to-back A10 champs, or at least tournament champs, I should say. Terrence Hill. He averages about 14 to 15 points a game. Laser Djokovic, their best two-way player, front court player. He's an X factor. Fast tempo offense. They're not necessarily like a lockdown defense like they kind of have been sort of in the past with other regimes and like Shaka Smart and some other coaches that have coached there. But they're very active. Let's see. They have tournament experience. They're balanced scoring, and they have strong guard play for sure. I would say some of the weaknesses is probably just there's no superstar. They're kind of just balanced. There's not like a guy that can go get you a bucket or anything. They're kind of just more of a balanced team. They can struggle against size and elite athleticism, which North Carolina might have against them, but it's going to be an interesting matchup. There's obviously a reason why North Carolina is only a 2.5-point favorites. I'm going to go and probably lean towards, I don't know who I'm going to pick here. I think I'm going to go with, my head says to go with UNC, but my heart's like, nah, dog, you got to pick VCU. You got to at least, because I feel like I'm going to have at least like 3 upsets, and I'm already at 1. Right, I'm only at 1, right? Yes, I'm only at 1 upset. Yeah, only 1 upset. I think I'm just going to go with VCU for now. That could also change. So Clemson and VCU could change. I'm going to go with VCU for now. All right, then we got our next matchup is Illinois versus Penn here. Illinois, one of the more talked about teams here, kind of like during sort of that February period. During February, a lot of people were talking in the college media world were like, "Oh man, Illinois, they're a really good team. They might make a run here. They're going to be like a sort of a dark horse title contender," which they certainly can be. I'm not saying they're not, but I do have some slight concerns about them. I would say the weaknesses are basically they can give up runs, and they're kind of a middle of the road defensive type of team, but they can score. But if they can't score, if there's going to be a stretch there where they're not going to be able to get some baskets, and if they're going up against a really good defensive team that can match with them, I would say kind of watch out for Illinois, because I think they could. If I'm going to pick them and they're going to play VCU, and what I was sort of saying with VCU is that they're not very good against teams that are very athletic and have size. I think Illinois could probably get to the Sweet 16 if I'm being completely honest here. Just kind of looking at their little draw here. But so actually, forget the but. Their net rating was 8, so they're top 10 in net rating. They're 7-8 in quad 1 games. They're 5-0 in quad 2s. Keegan Wagler, one of the top freshmen. I mean, he wasn't even highly that recruited. He just came out of nowhere. He just had like this amazing game, and then he just took off from there. And everybody keeps talking about this amazing freshman from Keegan Wagler out of Illinois. He averages about 17 points a game, 5 assists as well, which is kind of interesting because I feel like Illinois guy likes to get up, but actually they're kind of a slow tempo team. They just control the tempo, and that's it. Because I feel like I see Illinois as more of a balance or a bit more up tempo team, but maybe I was wrong there. But they're second in offensive rating in Ken Pon. Their defensive rating was 28. They obviously have skilled big men, and they can create shots. As for Penn here, this is their first tournament appearance since 2018, losing to Kansas in the Sweet 16 as a 16 seed. Their last Sweet 16 was in 1979. That same year, they went to the Final Four to lose to Michigan State in Magic Johnson. They're a very fast tempo team. Obviously, their head coach is Fran McCaffrey, who's familiar with Illinois, being in the Big Ten, and that former Iowa coach. They also have this great player named T.J. Powers. He's going to be a name to recognize for in the tournament. You're going to be like, oh man, this T.J. Powers guy, he's awesome. I only watched one game of Penn's, really, and I was like, holy cow, who is this T.J. Powers guy? He's awesome, because he had 40 points in the championship game against Yale. He had this amazing shot against Yale to force overtime. It was incredible. T.J. Powers, he might be him. He might be able to carry this team for an upset against Illinois. It's gonna be a tall task, but I think if anybody can do it, it's T.J. Power for sure. Their net rating is 139. They're 0-2 in quad 2 or quad 1 games. They're 1-4 in quad 2s. Their one win being against Yale, and obviously in the title game, they're 0-2 against Yale. So that's why they always say it's hard to beat a team 3 times, and Yale definitely proved that. Like I said, I was sort of saying they're good. They're not great, but they're okay offensively. But again, they have T.J. Powers, so it could mean something. They're a solid defensive team. They can struggle against. They're going to struggle against Power 4 teams, which obviously Illinois is. And I'm just gonna go ahead and just pick Illinois here to get the win, because I do think they are the better team, and there's a reason why they are a 24.5 point favorite. They are huge underdogs against Illinois. Huge. So yeah. All right, let's move on here to St. Mary's and Texas A&M here. Or where did I put? Oh, here. I put it in the other document that I have. Let's see. Where did A&M and St. Mary's go? Here we go. St. Mary's. All right. St. Mary's out of the West Coast Conference. Their head coach, Rainey Bennett, who's been there for 25 years. They were 27-5 overall this year. They were co-champs in the West Coast Conference with Gonzaga. Obviously, they're number 7 seed this year. Identities. They're defensive-minded first team. They're top 10 nationally, slow pace. They are heavily ball movement and smart shot selections. That's always been a St. Mary's type of deal, and they just always have these Australian people who just play really good basketball. And the big physical front court, they're kind of just a grinder down type of team. They play ugly. That's St. Mary's basketball. Their star player is, let's see if I'm going to try and pronounce his name, but Paulus Murjani. Eucalis. I don't even know if I pronounced that right. I probably just made a fool of myself. But their best player averages about 18 points a game, 7 rebounds, go-to scorer, can stretch the floor, can dominate inside. You got floor general and Joshua Dent. He averages about 13 points, 5 assists. He controls the tempo. He's got a very very great decision maker. Another, key pieces as well as like Mickey Lewis, Ian Campbell, Roy Hawks, and a couple others. Other stats that kind of stand out. They average about 80 points a game. They're top 10 in national. The defense, they're shooting about 38% from three, and they're very assistant heavy on the offensive side. Sort of like I was saying earlier, very elite defensively, strong rebounding, veteran head coach, low on turnovers, very smart on offense, and they have experience in the tournament, at least 5 apparent. They've been to the tournament 5 straight years now. I'd say some of their weaknesses are they can struggle against teams who if they force to play fast, they're not overly athletic against, if they wanted to, since they're playing A&M. We're going to get to A&M here in a sec to see if there are any overly athletic, but I don't think A&M is. But they're very heavy reliant on half-court execution, and if shots aren't falling, they can get behind here, fall behind easily. As for A&M, the A&M Aggies, 21-11 this year. They finished 4th in the SEC. First-year head coach Bucky McMillan, Bucky Ball, as people like to say with this coach. Type of offense, or their kind of identity is fast-paced, very high-scoring offense. With Bucky Ball here, they're very heavy guard play, and they're spaced out, rely on tempo and scoring bursts. If they like to go on runs, they're top 10 in offense. Their weakness is sort of defensively. Obviously, they can score, but they can also allow some baskets. So it's going to be kind of an interesting matchup. Like I said, if Bucky Ball can ramp up the tempo here and kind of force St. Mary's to kind of play into their advantage, then A&M can easily win this game. But if somehow St. Mary's can force A&M to play slow, then St. Mary's definitely has the advantage. Their key players to watch out for is Rashawn Gree. He's a forward, averages about 15 points a game, 8 rebounds. He's a team leader in both. He's a presence inside, consistent, most important player on the roster. Guard plays is Pop Isaacs. Pop Isaacs on A&M? I had no idea. Who knew? I lost track where he went after he left Creighton. I thought he was just out of the league. I had no idea he was at A&M. Good to know. There's Ryan Griffin. There's a guy named Lane. And then obviously with Bucky Ball, up-tempo. They were, at least with coaching impact, they were with his offense, and they were heavy on transfers and turnaround success in his first year with Bucky Ball. Strength, like I was sort of saying, offense, depth, fast pace, and momentum. They had some momentum towards the late end of the year. Some of their weakness, I would say, probably is just not great defense. They can give up a lot of points. They can be inconsistent in game to game. They're not very big physically and rely on offense. If the offense is not clicking, then things can go bad. I would lean, let's see, what's the point spread here on this one? A&M is a 3.5 point underdogs to St. I think I might lean towards St. Mary's. I think St. Mary's can control the tempo. I think if St. Mary's can hold Bucky Ball to about under 70 points, then I think they have a chance to win. So I'm going to say that St. Mary's holds A&M here, and they're going to get the win for St. Mary's and A&M season here. All right, let's move on here to Houston and Idaho. Houston, out of the Big 12, they finished this year. What was their record? Did I have it here in my notes? Did I write it down at all? And I did not, because I figured I could just go off of, based on memory or something like that. They're about a 23.5 point favorite against Idaho. They're 28-6 this year. Have some great wins. Who do they beat this year? They beat Kansas, and let's see. Let me just look at them real quick. Sorry, I thought I had notes on them, and I was kind of just gonna go based on memory here, but that's not gonna be the case. They beat Arkansas. They beat Texas Tech. Obviously, they play in the Big 12, so that's definitely one of the best conferences in the league, and obviously they can play with the best of the best. Obviously, they can't beat Arizona, but otherwise, they can kind of hang with anybody. I just really like Houston's defense. Kingston Flemings is a really good player for Houston, I really like him. He's a freshman. I think some of their weaknesses, I would say, is probably their front court. They're not as physical and they're not as good as they were like in the past, like last year with Javon Roberts. He was an important player for Houston. I would also say Milos Eugene needs to kind of like pick up his game a little bit, even though he's a great player. But I feel like he hasn't necessarily hasn't played his best ball yet. And I think once the tournament comes around and start, here tomorrow when they play in the night game, I think Miles Eugene will maybe when the lights turn on, he'll start playing his best basketball because he's been a little off this year. It's kind of like I don't want to say he's like taking a step back just a little bit, but maybe he has a little bit, and hopefully the tournament he can flip a switch and he'll come back to the old Miles Eugene we kind of saw last year. Really good player. So yeah, I'm gonna pick Houston here, but here's some fun facts about Idaho here. They're 21-14 this year. They won their conference tournament. Don't remember what conference they're in. Their last tournament appearance was in 1990. So congratulations, you made it back to the tournament after nearly 30-plus years, I think, if I'm doing the math right. Some famous alums, Mark, what's his name, from the Broncos. He was a former Broncos player. I have it right here on the list, so I just can't remember how he pronounces his last name. And then the guy from SpongeBob also attended this school, who plays Patrick Star. I'm not even going to try and pronounce his last name, but the guy who plays Patrick Star and also who was Marshall's dad in How I Met Your Mother and some TV show called Coach or something like that. He got a degree from there from 1981, class of 81, in literature arts. So Patrick Star, I'm sure, will be watching this game, watching his alma mater get their ass kicked against Houston. So, yeah. All right, here. We're going to move on to the now West region with Arizona against Long Island. All righty, let me move this over here. Okay. So, Long Island. All right. So, here's some fun facts about Arizona here. Arizona's kind of been, as we get closer to the Final Four and I keep picking these games, I'm just going to be playing straight here. Arizona's is going to be my favorite to win. I think they've been the best team, honestly, after watching them in person. I think that, and watching them been watching a lot of Big 12 basketball, I think they're the best team in the country. They're so deep. They got some great guard play. Their front court's awesome. They can go 8 deep. They're so big. They're great offensive. They're great rebounding and offensive rebounding as well. They're 16-2 in quad 1 games. They're undefeated in quad 2s. I mean, this is a great team overall. They have Jaden Bradley, who's a Big 12 Player of the Year. I had a little hesitance with that decision making about making him Big 12 Player of the Year, but after what I saw in the Big 12 tournament, you know what? I have no problems with it now. I understand why. Then you have Braden Burries. He's awesome. He's a freshman. He's going to be a first-round pick for sure. And then you got Anthony DeLuso. He's kind of a glue guy. He's going to be an important player for them as well. And then you got Kopete. He's going to be a first-round pick for sure. He's an awesome freshman. And then you got Toby Owaka. And then the big guy, can't even remember his name, but he's really good too. I mean, this is just a great team overall. They're just great. I have nothing else to say. They're just really good. But for Long Island Beach, not Long Island Beach, but just Long Island, it's in Brooklyn. Their head coach is Rod Stickland, former NBA player, former first-round pick by the Knicks, played 17 years in the NBA. It's his 4th year in being the coach there. Career stats, he averages about 13 points and 7 assists. He played for 9 teams. They've been in Division I program since 2019. So of August of 18, Long Island just made an announcement that they were going to unify athletic programs with 2 campuses, theirs and another program, the LIU Blackbirds and the Division II LI Post Pioneers, the Division II school, made them into one. Now they're the Sharks. So they're the NEC champs, both in regular season and conference champs as well. So maybe they can pull up an upset and be the third 16 to ever beat a 1. Unlikely, but that's why you play the games. But again, very unlikely. No one's beating Arizona in the first round. Okay, let's move on here to the 8-9 matchup here. Let me just move this over so I can get to that. Okay. All right. Let me scroll up. Here we go. This is Kellen Willer's first year with Villanova in the Big East. Like I sort of said, the Big East was down this year. This was the last team that made it to the tournament in the Big East. They went 24-7 this year. They finished 3rd in the Big East. They're pretty solid offensively, not great defensively. And balanced team, not elite offensively, but effective. Sometimes can be good defensively, but like I said, they're a little inconsistent. Tyler Perkins, their leading scorer and their team leader, primary scorer. They also have Duke Bennett. Averaged about 10 rebounds, a lead rebounder, double-double machine. The supporting cast is you got Bryce, Lindsay, Asterix, Matt Hogues, and a couple other players. Just kind of their strength is they can go pretty deep. They're a pretty deep team. They can go about 10 deep with their experience and some transfer blends. The rebounding's, like I said, they're one of their main strengths. A little bit of maybe some weaknesses is a bit of streaky sometimes. Defense is good, but again, not elite. This is their first 20-plus win year since Jay Wright has left Villanova. Early storylines is they entered the year with kind of low expectations that kind of finished in the middle of the pack, but obviously with the conference being down this year, they kind of finished third in the conference. Let's see what kind of makes them dangerous. They have multiple players who averages about double figures. They got veteran guard play. They can rebound the heck out of the ball. So yeah, I would say probably what's holding the bag a little bit is obviously just having a go-to guy, an elite superstar or something like that, and they're inconsistent and shooting. And it's a first-year head coach, and maybe it's not necessarily perfect, but I'm gonna give it a slight edge to Villanova right now. But let's talk about Utah State, because I'm sure not a lot of people know a whole lot about Utah State. Utah State, this is second year for their head coach, Gerard Khaled. They were record this year. Doesn't say in my preview notes. Well, that's just silly. All right, 28-6 this year for Utah State. They finished they won the conference this year. They were regular season champs and postseason champs. They finished top 40 in offense. Very solid, not elite defense, but very solid defense. They allow about 70 points a game. Some of their key players is MJ Collins Jr. He averages about 18 to 20 points. Very effective scorer. Very high volume shooter. Then you got Mason Flash Vasval. He averaged about 16 and 5 rebounds. Floor general is Drake Allen. He's their team's leader in assists. He controls the tempo and creates the offense. And they have some very good front court as well. Some key players as well. Very scoring depth, wing production, and secondary players as well. Strengths is elite offense, guard play, scoring balance, and obviously a mature team. Weakness is just the defense is good, but not great. Not super great on size, but can rely on shooting very well, or maybe rely on too much on shooting. If they fall back, it's gonna, if they get out on a cold spell, it could hurt them. But they're kind of a fast to medium pace offense. A lot of ball screens are created, 3-point shooting, and all that. So I'm thinking I might just go with Utah State just because of how down this year the Big East was. So I'm going to go ahead and pick Utah State with the win here. All right, Wisconsin versus High Point. Now this is an interesting matchup because you've got on one hand a very hot Wisconsin team who's playing some really good basketball, and I kind of was thinking if they won the Big Ten tournament, I was going to be like, this team could go very far, but they got a 5 seed in the bracket, and they're also in Arizona's bracket. If they were in someone else's bracket, like Florida's or Duke's, I think they got a chance to beat the 1 seed, but they still might. We'll have to wait and see here. All right, so the Wisconsin Badgers this year, they finished 24-10 this year. And let's see. They roughly have been in the top 25 all year. Very, very good offensively. Can shoot the ball very well. Their guard plays are awesome. Nick Boyd's awesome. And who's the other guard? John Blackwell. He's awesome. And then their front court, Nolan Winters. He's going to be a very effective, very important key for them. But yeah, they're kind of like a bit of a fast-paced offense. Their defense is pretty solid, but not great. I feel like I've been saying that a lot here with a lot of teams saying they're pretty good offense or defensively, but not elite because there's not a whole lot of elite defense out there. Like I said, Wisconsin offense is more driven than old Badger teams for sure. They can still kind of control the tempo, but they score a little bit more punches than usual. Like I was saying, they got some really good guard play. Their depth, they got some depth for sure. Austin Rapp is awesome. He had an amazing 3-point performance in the Big Ten tournament against Michigan. He was awesome. Great guard system is kind of like a dependent on offense, low turnovers and good spacing, half-court execution, and then their strengths are also as elite guard play, effective offense, experienced guards as well, just strong rebounding presence with winners and other people. I would say some of the weaknesses probably the depth can be a little bit inconsistent sometimes, and they rely heavily on Boyd and for the offense, and they can struggle with athletic teams and fast-paced teams. They do well versus half-court teams and poor defensive teams as well, teams that don't pressure the guards. So I'm going to go ahead and just say Wisconsin's probably going to get the win here, but let me tell you a little bit more about High Point, because this is going to be a sort of a trendy 5-12 pick as well, I'm sure, because High Point, out of the Big South Conference, they finished the year 30-4 this year. Only lost one game in conference play. They're the regular season champs and tournament champs. Their style of play is very effective. It's like top 5 in the nation. They can score at will. They can score about 90 points a game. Offensive rating is like number 1 nationally. They shoot about 50% from the field. Scoring margins is 20+. Very elite offense, very fast tempo, effective shooting. Spacing is great. Can overwhelm weaker teams with quickness. Terry Anderson is great. He's the team's leading scorer. Aquano. God, I'm just really butchering people's names here. This is going to be like, I'm sure somebody in one of my group chats is like, Chan, do you even know how to pronounce names? I'll be like, hell no, I don't. Anyways, you got Conrad. So, yeah, they're a very effective team. Really good offensively, depth, can shoot the ball very well. They can rebound the ball very well as well. Some of their weaknesses probably just because their strength of schedule and then play a whole lot of well-known opponents. Their defense is good, but their offense carries them a little bit more than them. So it's definitely, this might be a high-scoring game. This might be a very high-scoring game here. I think the first team to score about 80 points is going to win the game. I think I'm going to give Wisconsin the win here. I'm going to lean towards Wisconsin. On this one. All right. Arkansas, Hawaii. Let's see. Arkansas here. Let's see. Let me get the sheet here. Here we go. Arkansas, second year under John Calipari. They were 26-8 this year. They finished 13-5 in the conference. They didn't win the regular season, but they won the conference tournament. They've been a top 20 team most of the season. Very elite offense. Top 10 or top 5 nationally. Their defense is a little weak considering they give up about 80 points a game, but they can score. So as long as they can outscore people, they're going to be just fine. Players to note their star freshman. There is Acuff Jr. He's awesome. I haven't watched a whole lot of Arkansas basketball, but I know he's elite. He averages about 22 points a game. He's a go-to scorer. He makes clutch shots. He's kind of the face of the team. They got some depth. They got Malik Thomas, DJ Wagner, that Brazil kid, a lot of key players on this roster. Elite guard play, can pace and score. And obviously John Calipari can recruit some of the best players to come there. The weakness is, like I said, defense and inconsistency with the kind of a young roster. And the half-court defense isn't great against physical teams. And also teams that like to go slow here. But with Hawaii, like I said, not watching a whole lot of Hawaii basketball. But this is they finished 24-8 this year. They finished second in the Big West Conference. This is Grant Knott's 11th season as the Hawaii's head coach. They were the conference tournament champs. I don't know who won the Big West Conference regular season title, but Hawaii won the tournament title. Let's see. Some storylines coming out of this season is it was a breakout season for them from missing the conference tournament in 2025 to the champs of last year. They're top 15 defensively. Got some key players to watch out for. Isaac Johnson, Dre Bullock, Hendrickson. They got supporting cast like another Isaac Kidd, Isaiah Kerr, and Hunter Carter. Very balanced offense. Defense travels well and can win with discipline, but not with just talent. They average about 80 points a game, allow 70. They spread the floor with forwards. They can attack you inside through Johnson. Ball movement and ISO. They don't do any ISO. They just do ball movement. And they defense calling is physical perimeter defense, protect the paint, and they get first tough late clock shots. But obviously the Acuff can make those type of tough shots. I would say probably some of the weaknesses. They don't really have a whole lot of weaknesses. It's, I would say mainly just like a superstar that can take over. Assist numbers are kind of low, and obviously their strength of schedule, because they probably didn't play a whole lot of Power 4 schools, I'm going to guess. But I think I should pick Arkansas just based on Darius Acuff and how awesome he is. But I think I might go Hawaii on this one, honestly, just because John Calipari. But that was what when he was winning Kentucky, he wasn't necessarily winning a whole lot of games. He wasn't getting far in the tournament. It kind of got stale with Kentucky. But, man, I don't know. I'm either going to go I think this pick is either going to go based off of Darius Acuff, or I'm going to go with Hawaii just because of an upset. Let's see what the point spread is here on this. Let's see. Where is the West region? Okay, so Arkansas is about a 15-point favorite. Oh, man, if it's a 15-point spread, man, that's interesting. I think I'm going to go with, screw it, I'm going to go with Arkansas. But maybe take Hawaii with the points here. Okay, so last night, obviously, Texas won, so they're going to play BYU in their first-round game after beating NC State in the playing game last night. Watching Texas last night, and I was kind of glancing the game, trying to doing my last-minute research and all that stuff with this podcast. I noticed that Texas is a solid offensive squad, even though they didn't look like it last night. But I do think, looking at their stats for most of the season, they're a pretty solid offensive squad. Not great defensively, but they can score easily. I think this is going to be kind of a high-scoring game because I think the over-under is pretty high here. BYU only being a 1.5-point favorite. The over-under is 159.5. But Texas is kind of an interesting squad this year. Obviously, this is first-year head coach for Sean Miller. Previously, he was at Xavier for his second stint there. And then, God, I keep forgetting to turn off my alarm here. All right, there we go. All right. So, anyways, Texas, I think, can hang with BYU just because even though I like watching BYU, I think they're a fun squad to watch. Obviously, with Ricky Saunders being hurt, doesn't really help. And obviously, a lot of people are probably going to pick Texas just because BYU is kind of trending in the wrong direction, but I felt like they had a good showing performance in the Big 12 tournament. Obviously, they didn't beat Houston, but I felt like watching that game, I was like, I think A.J. Debonza could at least win them a game, in all honesty, with A.J. Debonza being a potential top 2 pick. Watching him in person, he's so tall and lengthy, and he can score anywhere on the court. I think A.J. Debonza can win him a game. Man, this is a tough one. So, yeah, I think I'm going to go with BYU on this one. I think I'm going to go BYU. It's going to be a close game, obviously, with the point spread saying that, but I think it's going to be a very close game. I'm going to go BYU. I'm just going to go strictly based off they have the superstar, they have A.J. Debonza, and Texas doesn't. All right, we got Gonzaga versus Kennesaw State. So we'll start with Gonzaga here. Obviously, a historical program in the West Coast Conference. This is Mark Few's 27th year. They're 25-2 this year in the conference. Very good offensive team. They got Graham Ike. He's a forward center. He averages about 20 points a game, 8 rebounds. He can score effectively inside. He's a double-double machine. Some of their backcourt is Adam Miller, Jalen Warley, and then Braden Smith. Then you got some front court wings like Tyrone Grant Foster, and some other key players as well. So I feel like they have the depth to make a run, but this Gonzaga team's kind of weird because they got their ass kicked by Michigan early in the year, and they didn't necessarily. I feel like they didn't play, or they played some good teams, but they didn't necessarily play to their best potential. Because I feel like old Gonzaga's teams would make a conversation saying either they're a really good team, they can make a Final Four run or some type of run here. But like I said, they're an elite offensive team. They can score inside. They got ball movement. They don't turn the ball over a lot. Solid, very underrated defense. It's top 100 in the defensive rating metrics. First turnovers, they limited shooting. They only allow about under 40% for their opponents. Let's see. Like I said, offensively, pretty good. Metrics, really good. They're top 5 in defensive efficiency. Strengths, like I said, just posts, veteran guards, balance, and they're effective offensively. Much improved defense. Weakness is probably just free throw shooting, roughly about 70% or under free throw shooting. Not heavy on threes. Their strength schedule of lower, I guess it's just based on they're not, even though they played some really good competition, but they also got their ass kicked by Michigan. So I think that just kind of leaves a bad taste in my mouth. It's like, they got their ass kicked by Michigan. So I'm going to probably lean towards Gonzaga here on this one, but for anyone that was curious about Kennesaw State, I feel like I'm getting pretty chalk heavy here, even though I got at least 2 upsets, quote unquote. I think I need to find a third one, and I think I have a perfect candidate, but we'll get there in a sec. Kennesaw State here, they're part of Conference USA. This is the 3rd year for their head coach, Antonio Petway. They were 18-13 this year. They're a pretty good offensive team. They're top 30 nationally. The middle of the pack defense, very competitive in the mid tiers in Conference USA. High scoring, fast tempo. Defense a bit inconsistent, but it's dangerous shooting the outside, shooting the threes of R.J. Johnson, Frank Kwan, and then they also have some other squads, some notable rotational players with a scoring guard, a veteran guard, and an engine for the offense. Let's see here. Their head coach's background is just pace, guard play, spacing. Their strengths is be able to score effectively, and their tempo and multiple guards scoring. Their defense can break down. They can get cold at times. They're inconsistent against top-tier opponents, and the rebounding can be outmatched depending on who they're playing, which is Gonzaga. And I think Gonzaga could probably out-rebound them. So yeah, I think I'm going to go with Gonzaga here. I think they're just going to be the better team, and obviously they are a 21.5 point favorite. Gonzaga is. Alrighty, so let's move on here to we're at the bottom half here for the West region as we got Miami versus Missouri. An interesting fact here, this game is going to be played in St. Louis, which is probably, I'm going to guess, like an hour away from Columbia, I should say, where Missouri plays. Let's see. It's from Missouri University. A 2-hour drive from St. Louis, actually. It's about a 2-hour drive. So it's going to be kind of a home court advantage for the Missouri Tigers, who are the 10th seed. But we'll talk about Miami's first here. Let's see if I have them on my notes. So I have Miami in my notes. I got to go check to see if I have my other notes here. Or did I accidentally skip this game? Let's see. Okay, nope. All right. So let's see. So yeah, Missouri. I haven't watched a whole lot of Miami basketball, but I know they got a first-year head coach from Duke. He really turned this program around after they had a very bad season. They weren't necessarily playing like Miami basketball. The previous head coach was getting old, and he was getting tired of the new ways of college basketball and how college sports were looking. So he kind of just retired, and they brought in this new guy. He's done a pretty good job, I think, with getting Miami back to the tournament. They got Missouri here. Like I said, home court advantage. Missouri is, what's his name? But I think I'm going to lean towards Missouri here just because it's a home court advantage, basically, for them. All right, let me take another quick break so I can get some water. Alrighty. We got Purdue here for taking on Queens. Obviously, Purdue winning the Big Ten tournament, preseason #1. They had their inconsistencies a little bit. Or not, I shouldn't say inconsistencies. They were just necessarily playing their best basketball, even though they are a 2 seed this year. Like, they just kept losing games at home by like all the good teams to like Iowa State, Michigan, Illinois. They had like 5 losses at home to like some really good squads, and you're just like, it's Purdue, and then they would have like 1 loss. You have a little head scratching about. You're like, is this Purdue team any good? We're thinking they're going to be like a 4 seed going up against 13, and they're going to be on like upset alert. And then somehow they finished the year out strong, won the Big Ten tournament, and they got the 2 seeds. So they don't have to necessarily worry too much about an upset. But sometimes with Purdue, you never know. Sometimes with their history, they can get upset easily. It comes out of nowhere. You go, why did Purdue lose now? How did they lose? So yeah. Let's see, with Queens here, everything we need to know about Queens is that it's not in New York. People will get confused by that. It's actually in Charlotte, North Carolina. They were 21-13 this year. They were in the top tier of the ASUN Conference. They finished 3rd. They won the conference tournament, but not the regular season. I don't know who won the ASUN in that year. I would assume it was probably like Austin Peay, I think. Looking at the standings one time. Their team identity, they're a fast-paced offense. They can score. Their defense is a little weak, not great. Teams can basically score on them, so Purdue won't have any problem with that. But Queens could also score with anyone. So if this is going to be kind of a shootout at some point, I think Queens is going to have to get some stops to keep pace with Purdue, because Purdue can score easily because they have the size and they have the guards to do it. Now let's see. Their key players is Nars Mann. He averages about 13 points a game and 5 rebounds. And like I said, their strengths are going to be elite offense, fast tempo, scoring opportunities. Defense is just major reliabilities, not great. How many points is allowed? They struggle against teams that are physical, and a defensive-minded team, which is kind of Purdue's kind of thing, being physical. Obviously, they have the size for it. They can't lose in shootouts if they fall behind. I would say. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'm going to go with Purdue here. All right, and then we're now at the last region here, and then we'll kind of pick up the pace just because we don't have to keep breaking down every matchup or keep talking about every team here. Kind of can just go based on picks and who I think, all that. So, okay, obviously Michigan, the number one seed in the Midwest. They're going to play Howard. Michigan been considered one of the best teams all of college basketball this year. Had some injuries with their backup point guard. I can't think of his name, but he's going to be out for the tournament. That's not great because obviously with him, they could have had some depth with it, but it is what it is. They've been playing without him for a while. They've looked good at times, but obviously against Purdue, they didn't necessarily play their best in that Big Ten title game. And they've had some close encounters or close games here lately. Like there was one game against Iowa, at Iowa. That was a close game than most people expected. Obviously, Purdue, there was a close game with Ohio State. There's been some close encounters of Michigan. They haven't been blowing out teams like they were in that February, towards in the beginning of February and January. But I still think there's no need to worry about Michigan, at least in the first round against Howard. Even though that was a good win for Howard. They got their first NCAA tournament win against UMBC. But sorry for Howard that they're just going to have to go up against a juggernaut that is Michigan. So, yeah. Then now we have another toss-up game with an 8-9 matchup as you got the Georgia Bulldogs going against St. Louis here. All right, as Georgia squad is the fourth year under the Mike Whites. They're 22-10 this year. Very good offensively. Low average defense, not great, but they're fast-paced, guard-driven, high on transfer. They can basically score with anybody here. And some of the weaknesses probably just inconsistent on the defensive end. Can struggle against protecting the rim. Rely on score runs. So if they're not going on runs here, it could be a little troublesome for sure. Not always depending on late game situations, but yeah. And then for St. Louis, let's see, where is St. Louis notes here? I think it's in the other one. Let's see. Here we go. St. Louis out of the A10. They started out the year 24-2, and they kind of were trending slightly in the wrong direction, just a little bit. But I still think they're a pretty good squad here. They got their head coach Judge Schertz, who's kind of been a hot name for coaching candidates. He's going to be a name to watch out for, but maybe he'll stay at St. Louis. It'll be tough to tell. We'll have to wait and see on that one. Their star player, Robbie Vili. He's a center, senior. His nickname is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, or Milk Mamba. He followed his head coach from Indiana State all the way to St. Louis here. He was a first-team All-A10 selection. They can score, but I think they're a little bit more defensive-minded team, even though they're a very good offensively team. They can shoot the ball very well. They're experienced, and in the system that the coach has is very detailed in scoring, ball movement, and all that other stuff. So I want to pick St. Louis because I don't know. Like I said, I'm not watching a whole lot of Georgia basketball, and I'm just going to lean towards St. Louis here. But let's look at the point spread here for this game. The point spread is at Georgia 2.5-point favorites. I think I'm going to lean towards, like I said, I'm just going to go with St. Louis here. I think St. Louis gets the win over Georgia here. All right, Texas Tech takes on the Akron Zips. The Akron Zips. All right, Texas Tech, an interesting squad here. Been very good for most of the season. Obviously, with losing one of their key players, JT Toppin. He's out for the year with touring his ACL against Arizona State. Very tough loss. You hate to see that. They have a little bit of injury stuff with Christian Anderson with some type of groin, but I think he's expected to play, so we don't have to worry about that too much. And then there was some type of other Watts, I think, was sort of on the injury report, but I think both are probably expected to play. But let me double check on that. Let me check here. Let's see. Yeah, so Texas Tech's point guard Anderson is expected to be available for the tournament. He's just briefly out of injury scare, but he should be good to go. And then let's see. I'm reading some articles here about some players. So yeah, I think we're good. I think we're good here. No other injuries to worry about for Tech. Everybody should be good to go. But this is definitely a trend. This is sort of another trendy pick here for an upset. I'm kind of in favor for it, but I want Texas Tech to win. I like watching Texas Tech. I think their guard play is really good. They can shoot the ball very well. They're a very good defensive team. And, I mean, they got Atwell who can shoot the ball out, who can shoot the lights out. Very good player. And obviously you can rely on Christian Anderson, a lead guard. Some of their notable wins was when they beat Duke in Madison Square Garden and in the early parts of the season. Obviously, getting the loss for TJ Toppin. I think this team could have gone very far in the tournament with TJ Toppin, but without, I'm not gonna say that they can't. But it's gonna be a more tough task to do. But I do like some of the guards that they have. They're not necessarily great in the front court here, but the Akron Zips, this is their coach's 9th season there. He's been there for a long time. Very good offensive-minded team. They got some really good guards. They got some transfers in, a lot of young guards as well. Let's see if any more information on them. No, I think that's about it, really, because like I said, some good guard play. I like this team a lot. I think they can score with Texas Tech, but I'm just going to go based on just because Texas Tech plays in the Big 12, and which is one of the best conferences in the country. But Texas Tech is definitely on upset watch here because they are only about a touchdown favorite, 7.5-point favorites for sure. Now, I think this is the upset to watch out for. Alabama versus Hofstra. Alabama, who just lost their starting point guard because he had a pound of marijuana was found and has kind of been removed from the team. Obviously, not great. I mean, I'm not opposed to people smoking or having marijuana, but you got to be smart about it. Know what state you're in and know that you're literally 4 days away, or I guess now 2 days away from playing in an NCAA tournament. You should not have that much marijuana to begin with. Why do you have a pound's worth of marijuana, my guy? What are you doing? Unreal stuff, let me tell you. But Hofstra, I was going to say, basically with Alabama, besides the whole marijuana thing with that player, they can score. Very elite offensive team because NATO's is a very offensive-minded coach. They can score. Not great, not like a defensive-minded team for sure, but they have great guard play for sure. So yeah, Aiden Holloway, he's going to be suspended, like I said in the notes there. And then you got Phylon. He's a good freshman. Breakout year for him. He can take over games. Some other noteworthy players to watch out for. I think basically they're if they can hit 10 to 15 threes a game, they're probably going to win. I think losing Aiden Holloway is going to be a tough one. But with Hofstra, even though they're kind of a slow tempo team and they were 24-10 this year out of the CAA, won the regular season, or they won the regular season, but they won the conference championship, which earned them an automatic bid. They're a defensive-minded team first. They're top 10 or top 5 in defending 2-point shots, and they're offensively effective. They're effective offense, solid, not elite, but they got good ball movement. They have multiple shooters that are shooting about 30 to 37 to 35% from 3-ish. They can get out and transition a bit, and then they have some guard plays like Cruz Davis, their leading scorer and team leader, as well as Patton Edmond, as well as some other good rotational players. Like I said, they're offensively very effective offensively. I think they're a more defensive-minded team for sure. I think this could be an upset. to watch out for because like it's an 11.5 point. Alabama's 11.5 point favorite. They don't have a point guard. Could be something to watch out for. I should pick this as an upset, but I think I'm going to, even though I just said I should pick this as my upset, but I think I'm going to go Alabama here. I think I'm going to go Alabama here on this one. These two games right here are just screaming upset alert. This is going to be, it's going to be Akron versus Hofstra in the round of 32, the winner going to the Sweet 16. I'm already seeing it right now, but for right now, I'm just going to go with my gut and say Alabama and Texas Tech are going to move on and advance here. All right, so Tennessee's going to take on the winner of Miami of Ohio and SMU. And we are still, obviously they played tonight. Well, still have to wait and see in who Tennessee's going to get. But to talk a little bit about Tennessee here. All right, Tennessee, this is the 11th year for Rick Barnes. Last year he went 30-8, made it to the Elite Eight, obviously losing to Houston in the Elite Eight. It's a very classic Rick Barnes team. Elite defense, very physical, slow tempo, half-court offense. They got some really good players like Nate Edmonds and Jacoby Bileski. He's a transfer from Maryland, really good player. Some really good depth in the front court. And then they have an X-factor and guard with Bishop as well. And some key players they lost last year was Ziegler and some others. But their strengths are basically just going to be elite defense again. Size and length, top tier freshmen, and some front court depth. Their weakness is probably just going to be shooting, new backcourt, consistencies, and half court offense can struggle at times. And there's no proven like game closer for them. But I think whoever comes out of the Dayton game, even though I'm rooting for Miami, Ohio to get into the actual field itself, I'm going to lean towards Tennessee here just because I think they're going to be too much for whoever comes out of that game. All right, we got 3 games to go here before we can just kind of just pick games and stop trying to analyze these games as well. Okay, so we got Virginia versus Wright State. Virginia, you know what? Let's talk about Wright State first. All right, so Wright State out of the Horizon League, second year under their second year head coach. They're 23-11 this year. They won the regular season and conference championship. Offensively, they're pretty okay-ish. They're like top 100 nationally, I guess. They're not great defensively. They can shoot the ball pretty effectively. Similarly, they're like they're like slow tempo, but not too slow. They're like in the middle. Very balanced scoring. Can force turnovers. Very good in late game situations and execution. Their weakness is probably just not a great rebounding team. Can get cold at times, and they don't have the lack of a go-to scorer for them. They have TJ Birch. They have Michael Cooper and some other key players for them as well. They have the defense. Birch was the defense player of the year, the tournament MVP, and it was first team All-League. Pickens was freshman of the year, and obviously their coach won Coach of the Year. They lost a lot of key players from last year's team. Obviously, it was a major rebuild for them, and obviously they got back to the tournament, so props to them. Let's see. Any other noteworthy stuff? No, I think that's pretty much it. As for Virginia here, let's see if I have notes for Virginia, if I can find it. No? Okay. Let's see. Let me see if I can find some Virginia stuff. Where is my Virginia notes? I guess I'm going to have to, let's see. Here we go. I think I found it here. All right, Virginia under their first-year head coach Ryan Oldman out of the ACC. They were 29-5 this year. Been roughly about in the top 15, the top 10, and late in the season. After this is post-Tony Bennett era reset. The previous head coach, I think, or no, did he take over Tony Bennett? I'm trying to remember. I think there was someone else. I'm trying to remember if there was someone in between Ryan Odom or if there was someone in between Bennett and Odom. I don't think there was, so I think I'm going to go. He took over Tony Bennett after he retired. So, obviously, whole new roster overhaul. 11 new players, only 3 returners, 7 total players. Had a rebuild fast, but immediate success. There were ACC title contenders in its first year. And, in the old Virginia, it cuts them to being slow tempo, elite defense, and low scoring. This new one is a bit more threes. They're still very defensive minded as well, but more transition and more scoring balance. The old Virginia would be in the 60s or something. This new one, they can score about 80 points, still very solid defensively. It's no longer like boring to watch this Virginia team. I think this Virginia team is pretty solid to watch. I think they're a bit more fun to watch. But they got Malik Thomas out of the ACC, who was a leading scorer for that conference last year. Sam Lewis and some other very good talented guard play as well. Elite rim protector and balanced scoring depth. They improved the offense from the old Virginia. I'd say probably some of the weaknesses is probably just defensively not a lead like the old bench teams were. Can be streaky from three sometimes, and late game execution. They're still working the kinks out a little bit with them. Let's see, they blew and the momentum they've recently they blew out Miami in the semifinals in the ACC tournament. They lost a close game in the ACC title game to Duke, which obviously are number 3 seed. So I think Virginia is probably going to beat Wright State. So we got our last 2 games here in the Midwest as Kentucky takes on Santa Clara. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm picking Santa Clara. I think this Kentucky team's so inconsistent. Now, granted, they've had some injuries, but I'm just not a huge fan of this Kentucky team whatsoever. Obviously, this is Mark Polk's second year as the Kentucky's head coach. They're 21-13 this year. Finished about 6th or 7th in the SEC. The Mark Pope's teams are usually a fast-paced team, guard-heavy, relying on. They can score with anybody, but their defense is not. It's usually not a good defensive-minded team. Usually, they got that guard. I can't think of his name. He's really good for them. I like some of their players. Like I said, they're just inconsistent. They spent all the money for this team and they got what they got. And like I said, there were some injury factors and saw that, but their defense is streaky. They're not elite inside. They're inconsistent against top teams, and their chemistry is just not there right now. You want to be playing some of your best ball heading into March, but I don't think they're necessarily doing that right now. As for Santa Clara, I think this is going to be my third upset. Out of the West Coast Conference, they were kind of on that bubble, finishing third. They were 26-8. The Broncos were. This is their first tournament appearance since 1996. So congratulations on making it back to the NCAA tournament. Like I said, they are a very effective efficiency. They're top 30 nationally. They can score pretty solid defensively. Let's see, their scoring margin is about 10. They got Christian Hammond. He's a guard. He's their leading scorer. They got Alan Graves. He's a forward. He's a freshman of the year and 6th man of the year for the conference, as well as, like I said, fast pace, effective shot shooting. They shoot about 35% from 3 as a team. They take a lot of threes, take 10-plus threes a game at least. It's good, but not dominant. Like I said, the defense is pretty good, not solid, or it's good, but not elite, nothing like that. But it's a very good defense. They take the ball away, but not their weakness. I would say is probably their interior defense. They can be attacked on. Like I said, the strength is offense. It's just multiple guys can score. They're effective with the ball movement, and some late momentum heading here in the late season. Defense is good, but not great. We'll have to wait and see what they are like against teams like Kentucky. Obviously, they couldn't beat Gonzaga, who's ended up being the 3 seed. Even though multiple times I felt like teams or analysts would be like, I think Santa Clara is a better team than Gonzaga, but somehow Gonzaga would always find a way to win. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and pick Santa Clara to upset Kentucky in the first round here. All right, we got Iowa State versus Tennessee State. I'm just going to go ahead and pick Iowa State just because I think they're the better team. They're going to probably beat the crap out of Tennessee State here. All right. As for Iowa State, they have the big 3, Taman Lipsey, Joshua Jefferson, and Milan Machilovic. Those are their big 3. They're kind of they go about 7 to 8 deep. They can score. I think they're playing some of their best ball right now, even after watching what they did against Arizona in the conference tournament, which was kind of a hung game for Iowa State. But nonetheless, if Arizona wasn't shooting the lights out from 3 from Anthony DeLuso, I think Iowa State could have won that game. But Arizona, like I said, it's probably going to be my favorite. It's going to be my pick to win it all. I think they're definitely the team to beat right now. But Iowa State went toe-to-toe with them. I just don't think that Tennessee State has the capability to handle Iowa State because Tennessee State doesn't really have the elite size for which Iowa State has, and they can be streaky shooting. They're not great shooting wise, And, like, this is, like, a new coach and new roster, so not a whole lot of experience probably in the tournament, I'm going to guess. They were preseason 4th in the OVC, even though they won the league and tournament, so that's noteworthy to notice there. But I guess they're a fast tempo offense, and they have good guard play. But like I said, I think this Iowa State defense can, like, really disrupt their Tennessee State's offense. I think Iowa State's defense is just elite. It's just one of the best out there in the country. The first team turnovers, I think if Iowa State can turn them over a bit and get it out to a lead, I think it's going to be a wrap. So obviously Tennessee State this year was 23-9. They finished first in the conference under first-year head coach Nolan Smith, who was a Duke player, or former Duke player, I believe. So it's in Nashville, and the game's being played in St. Louis, so it's drivable distance for although Iowa State fans don't want to go to the game. So, all right, now we got to go back up to the East here. We're just not gonna do a whole lot of breakdown. We're just gonna kind of just pick the games here. So we're back up to the East region with Duke versus TCU. I'm gonna go ahead and pick Duke here, but I do think TCU can give them a run. I do think TCU can make it close, and I do think TCU can have the possibility of upsetting Duke, because like I was saying earlier before, that TCU can hang with anybody. St. John's and Kansas. I'm going to go with St. John's here, just because I do think that St. John's is a slight better team than Kansas right now, because I just don't know what kind of Kansas team I'm going to get with this squad. So it's going to be an interesting matchup for sure, but I'm going to go ahead and lean towards St. John's right now. Then we got South Florida versus Michigan State. Like I was saying earlier, I love South Florida. I love this team. I fell in love with what I was doing the research on, and one highlight that I was watching, I was like, damn, this team could go the distance here. So I think I'm just gonna pick them as my Cinderella team. So I'm gonna pick them over Michigan State to go to the Sweet 16 as my Cinderella pick. And UCLA versus UConn. Again, Nick Cronin hates the East Coast, so I'm just gonna pick UConn, just because I think they're the better team than UCLA here. All right, so now we're down to the South region, Florida versus Clemson. I'm going to go Florida just because I think it's simple. It's Florida, and they've been one of the hottest teams in the country. All right, so we got Vanderbilt versus Nebraska, 4 versus 5 here. Let's see. Let's click on this preview here. Let's see. Oh, a lot of people are neck to neck here on. About 3 million people have picked Nebraska to win this matchup, and 5 million people have picked Vandy to win this matchup. I've been on Nebraska's bandwagon all year. I think I'm gonna just go all in on Nebraska and say Nebraska's going to win this game here. They're going to beat Vanderbilt. VCU versus Illinois. I'm going to go with Illinois here just because in when I was talking about that VCU can struggle against some length and athleticism, and I think Illinois has all the things they need to make it a Sweet 16. Now, this is going to be a slugfest. St. Mary's versus Houston. Oh, man, I'm going to go Houston just because I think Houston can still play at a high level here, and they can easily make a run. All right. Out in the West region, we got Arizona versus Utah State. I'm going to go with Arizona just because I think, once again, they've been the best team all year. Wisconsin versus Arkansas. This is going to be an interesting one. I think this might be the game of round of 32. Man, I'm going to go with Arkansas by a hair. It's a tough one. I think A-Cup can just take this team and take them to heights they haven't been to in a while, at least with Arkansas. All right, let's move on here to BYU Gonzaga. I'm going to go with Gonzaga just because I think Gonzaga is going to be too much for BYU. You know, like I said, usually Devonta can only carry them so much. So I'm just going to lean towards Gonzaga because I feel like Gonzaga always makes it to the Sweet 16 almost every year. Then I'm going to go Purdue here just because I think Purdue has the size and they have the better guard play than Missouri does. All right, let's go out to the Midwest now. We got Michigan versus St. Louis. I'm going to go Michigan here because I think there's going to be too much for St. Louis here. Texas Tech, Alabama, that's going to be an interesting one. I'm going to go with Tech here because I think they're going to make more threes than Alabama will, because I think this could be a game where the point guard position can be an issue here for Alabama, because I think Kirsten Anderson is going to be the best player probably on the floor for them. And then I'm going to go with for Tennessee, Virginia. I'm going to go Virginia here just because I think Tennessee is kind of a weird team. A little bit of inconsistencies. Still really great defensively, but I think Virginia gets a win here. All right, Santa Clara versus Iowa State. I'm going to go Iowa State here. Like I said before, the big three, as long as the big three play well, and then if they create turnovers, then Iowa State can easily get to the Sweet 16. All right, let's back up to the East region now here with Duke versus St. John's. I'm going to go with, man, this is a tough one here. I'm going to go Duke. And then I'm going to go UConn, even though I already hate this UConn pick getting to the Elite Eight, but it's fine. It's fine. The Cinderella run ends for South Florida here. All right, back to the South region in the Sweet 16. I'm going to go Florida over Nebraska. I'm going to go Houston over Illinois. And then we're going to go Arizona over Arkansas. We're going to go Purdue over Gonzaga here. Oh, man, I already have like ones versus twos. This is so chalky. So chalky. You know what? Here, I'll go with some type of an upset. I'll go Tech over Michigan. I'll go Iowa State over Tech here. I'm going to go Duke over UConn in the East region to come out of the East. And then I'll have Houston coming out of the South region. And then I'll have Arizona coming out of the West region. And then I'll have Iowa State once again beating Tech to get to the Final Four. And then I'm going to have Duke and Arizona in the title game. And I'm picking Arizona to beat Duke in the title game. Let's see. I'm going to do about 158. So, I think I'm going to have Arizona cutting down the nets, beating Duke and Indianapolis. Even though I don't necessarily like that pick a lot. The Duke pick, I don't know if I have to revisit this, but I think this is going to be the bracket for now. At least for this is my bracket for the show, and then I'll create my own personal one. But this is just for the show. I'll probably have some tweaks on my own personal bracket, but I'm going to go with this as the Tweet Show's podcast bracket here, as Arizona takes down Duke here to win the national championship since 2001 or 97 or something like that. I think it's 97. All right, so Final Four: Duke, Houston, Arizona, Iowa State. Looky there. All righty, fantastic. So all right. I've done the bracket breakdown. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode as much as I sort of did doing all this research. I appreciate everybody listening to today's episode. Make sure you go out and support the new TikTok, because I had to get a new TikTok account because the old one, unfortunately, was under a different sign-in, and I can't figure out the sign-in thing because it was under the old Twitter account. It was under the Twitter account, and TikTok got rid of the option to sign in through X. It was that's how I signed in. And I don't have access to that old TikTok account, so I had to create a new one. And the new one is, let me get the official @ here for it. It is @TweetShowPod is the new TikTok handle. So make sure you go and follow the new podcast on TikTok here. And obviously make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. That's obviously just Tweet Show Podcast. You can find it on YouTube, I'm sure. Make sure you like and subscribe. Tell your friends about the show and all that. And then make sure you like and subscribe to any audio platform that you typically listen to this on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, or whatever platform you usually listen to the Tweet Show podcast on. And let's see, anything else noteworthy that I need to mention? I think that's pretty much it. Here, I'll say this. I think I'm going to try and record some type of episode after so once the Thursday games are over, I'm gonna go record a pod, release it that morning, and have it out for you if you want to hear the recaps of all the games, or maybe I'll try and attempt to go live. I don't know yet. I'm gonna figure that out. But make sure you look out for that, and I'll try to tweet something out or post something on social media about going live or having some type of new episode out for it. So make sure to be on the lookout for that. Also, I'm on Twitter if you wanted to keep updated on anything related to the show. Tweet Show. It should just be Tweet Show @Tweet Show. Let me double check here. Sometimes I forget what my handles are. Yeah, it's just @Tweet Show on X. So make sure you subscribe to it. Make sure you follow me on all the platforms. I think I'm going to get an Instagram page here pretty soon. But as of right now, we're just going to stick to X and TikTok. And then we'll get an Instagram page here soon. And then also, like I previously said, go support us on the YouTube channel and make sure you subscribe to all the audio platforms as well. So I think that's pretty much it. Like I said, I'm going to keep you guys posted about episodes during the tournament games and all that. So with that all being said, I appreciate everybody listening. I'll see you guys next time.